Have you ever wondered why your photos just don't have that professional look, even though you're using a wide aperture? You're not alone. Most beginners overlook a crucial aspect that can make or break your shots. You can get way better photos by just going a step further in how you use aperture to take amazing shots. I'm a nature photographer, but this actually matters in all types of photography, not just nature photography. As a beginner, I knew two things about aperture. It controls the amount of light you get together with the shutter speed and the ISO, and the aperture controls the depth of field. That is how much from front to back of the image that is in focus. And I believe that was all there was to know. However, there's much more that affects the aperture you should use to get the best shot, and ways you can use the aperture to get a certain look. First of all apertures aren't equal. You shouldn't necessarily just shoot wide open to get more light. Even though it could help you get a faster shutter speed or shoot at a lower ISO level, you can still end up with unusable shots. You see, most lenses have a certain aperture range where the lens performs better than when using it either wide open or fully closed down. Depending on the lens you got, both of these aperture extremes can cause your images to have like a soft focus. If you want to avoid that, you need to find the sweet spot of your lens. On my Tamron 150 to 600mm, the sweet spot is around f8. However, wide open at 6.3, at 600mm, the images are quite soft, even though I really need that extra light an open aperture gives me. On my Nikon Z400 f4.5, the sweet spot is around f5.6, but it's still quite sharp at 4.5. So for some lenses, shooting wide open won't give you the sharpest images. When you use larger f numbers, another issue can occur. If you want to take landscape photos where you want a deep depth of field, you shouldn't just shoot at the largest f number. This can cause you to get home with images that are soft looking instead of sharp, but for a whole other reason. This is called diffraction. Diffraction happens when light waves bend and spread out as they pass through the aperture of your lens. Imagine shining a flashlight through a narrow hole. The light will not travel in a straight line once it gets through the hole, but it will spread out a bit and create a little bit wider beam. This is similar to what happens in photography when light passes through the aperture and spreads out a bit when reaching the sensor. Smaller apertures, which are equal to higher f numbers, leads to more diffraction. This is because the light waves have less space to pass through, causing them to bend more. That's why you don't want to just crank up the f number to get a bigger depth of field. Find the sweet spot, and in most cases shoot as close to it as possible while still getting a good enough depth of field, or generally stay below f13 or on that ballpark, unless you want to create a special effect with the aperture that we'll come to in a second. That was simply amazing. Just as I was taking some shots of these hills with the beautiful trees, seven horses appeared on the ridge. You can still see the contour of the horses. So hopefully it turns out well. By the way, if you enjoy this video and want to learn more about nature photography, remember to like this video, share it with your friends, and maybe even subscribe to the channel. As I mentioned, as a beginner I thought the depth of field was controlled by the aperture, but that's just one of 4 factors. Let's look at the other three. Firstly, the wider a focal length you use, the more depth of field you'll get. The more zoomed in you are, the shorter the depth of field will be, still using the same aperture. This matters when you try to get a beautiful separation between the foreground and the background. Secondly, the further away you are from a subject with the same aperture, the more depth of field you get. This means that at f2.8 further away, you can get the same results as f5.6 closer to a subject. The last thing about depth of field is not tied directly to the aperture, but when we feel that a certain aperture should give us that soft background, the issue is often that the background is too close to the subject. Now there's even more to choosing the right aperture, especially your choice of aperture when shooting backlit. Which aperture you use affects the look you get. Wide apertures give you beautiful bokeh if you use a little longer focal length, like 90mm for example. The number of aperture blades in your lens affects the roundness of these highlights in the background. With a wide aperture, if you catch some sun rays by getting the sun just on the edge of the frame of your composition, you can get these beautiful soft sun flares. However, if you stop down your lens and use a narrow aperture, you can get a beautiful starlight effect in your photo when you point your camera towards the sun with an object blocking the sun ever so slightly. This works best with a wide lens. Now all of this is due to the aperture settings you use in the camera, so take control of it. That is all I have for you today. I hope you found it useful and perhaps learned something. If you're shooting with a budget lens, you absolutely need to be aware of the tips that I share in this video up here. So see you over there. Take care and have fun.